Okay, hey, welcome everyone to English 211 this summer. Um, my name is Joe Betts. I'm the professor for this course, and I want to give you a short welcome video to provide a very brief course overview um, and introduce myself to you. So let me start with a brief introduction of who I am. So I am a an English professor with Ivy Tech and have been um, for going, approaching 15 years now, which is wild to say. Um, my primary role with the college is as an assistant faculty lead for Ivy Online English. So that means that I effectively supervise the Ivy Online English courses that exist. Uh, this is an Ivy Online English course. I don't supervise myself whenever I'm teaching. Aaron Lehman is the supervisor for this course, who is the faculty lead for art sciences and education. I live in Bloomington, Indiana, and have and taught at the Ivy on or the Ivy Tech Bloomington campus for many years. First as an adjunct faculty member, and then as an assistant professor, and now all the way through finishing the professor track. I'm married. I have a daughter um, and a dog. Uh, I like to play basketball. I like to garden. Um, and I like a nerdy game called Warhammer Age of Sigmar, which is a miniatures game, a miniature like tabletop war game, which is kind of fun. So that's a little bit about me and some of my hobbies. But let's talk briefly about the course, get an overview of the course, and set some ex early expectations for you, and then we will close this video. So when you get into our course, I encourage you to review the syllabus as it will explain the goals of the course. But some highlights are we use a textbook that is open access, meaning you don't need to buy any additional materials or anything like that, which is great. And the links within modules for our reading will take you to the pieces that you need to read. And generally, this will be within the learning materials space of the module. And you can start to click on these links, and that will take you through what you need to read for that week. Our class is focused on producing more technical professional communication. So we will discuss things like memos. We will discuss things like building our resumes or CVs. We'll work on a group research project toward the end of the course because a lot of professional communication does require some form of collaboration. And that is the general arc or the general goal of our course is to work on developing the professional communication skills that we need in our future professional lives. And that's what we get to practice in this course. Now, you're seeing here on my screen the instructor resources that you won't see on your screen whenever we view as a student in modules, but if this is your first Ivy Online course, you will be in modules for a large part of the course. You should expect to see an announcement from me on Monday or Tuesday of each week that provides a brief overview of the week's content and what it is you need to focus on and be aware of. And then you'll dive in and you will start to move through these module pages. Generally, we'll start with some type of summary, the goals of the module that we are hoping to learn. We then have a little checklist here with a kind of estimate of time for each of the items that we need to complete. Generally, will be reading some things, then trying to apply some concepts, trying to do that in some writing, maybe taking a quiz on, to check our reading and things like that. And then we move into the learning materials, and you always want to just move through these learning materials in the order that they're provided. And that's going to help you be more successful whenever you start to move through. There will be some weeks I'm still updating the course, some weeks where I'll have extra content for you, some weeks where I won't. But this is where that would go. This is kind of prompting me is we're before the class right now is open for you is when I'm recording this short video. Here's an example of the quizzes. They're short, they're untimed, and they are really there just to make sure that you're getting what you need out of the textbook. We will generally have discussions most weeks, and your initial posts will end up being due, generally on something like a Thursday or a Friday for the initial post. And then your reply post, whenever there are replies that are required, will generally be due on before the end of the day of the following Monday. Those are the learning materials that we got. So yeah, so anyway, that's the general flow of our course. You'll see an announcement from me on Monday or Tuesday, but ideally you are jumping into the class and you're thinking, okay, if I was in this course on campus, if I had to go into campus to take this course, I would be in that classroom for about 6 hours each week. So you need to think, how can I apply time for this course to get everything done? How can I apply the 6 hours I would normally spend on campus doing the work for your online course? And you will find most weeks, if you can dedicate truly 6 hours of time, you're going to get through a majority or all of the work, which includes your assignments, um, in that time, in my experience. Some weeks, like our first week, you might spend less time, less than 6 hours. In weeks 2 through 6, you might spend around 6 hours. And then maybe in the final weeks, whenever we're finalizing team projects, maybe you're spending more time than that, like you would in a face-to-face course where you would spend 6 hours in class in the week, and then you would have work to do outside of class, however many hours it might take you to do that. So that's a real advantage we have in an online course where because we're saving time commuting, we're saving time, and we're able to do the work whenever it is most convenient for us during the week, before the deadlines, then we have that advantage and we can gain some time. So this course is constructed, I've built this course for you so you flow through the information, but there will be times when you have questions where some concepts don't stick, where my announcements don't help you either. And in those cases, you just want to email me. So I will always respond to your email Monday through Friday, within one day. You email me on Monday, I'll get back to you by the end of the day on Tuesday. You email me on Tuesday night, I'll get back to you before the end of the day on Wednesday. Um, if you email me on Friday, I I might see it before I leave the office, but I might not. So that means I'll get back to you on Monday. Keep that in mind as you think about the timing of your work and the timing of your questions. Um, and yeah, I think that's really the most important piece as just a welcome and here's how the class works and here's how you want to start thinking about it. In my opinion, this is one of the more valuable courses at the college just because your goal is to move on and be a professional in whatever workplace you enter into next. And this course is all about working to develop those professional workplace skills. Now, I'm teaching two sections of English 211 this summer. I'm teaching a 10P and an 11P. So right now I'm in the 11P course. So if you're in the 10P section, and seeing this video, which I'm going to use for both sections because it's the same course, don't be alarmed. Okay, I will end this video now. Please let me know if you have any thoughts, questions, concerns. Welcome to this summer term. I love summer students because they're generally very driven. They're taking a course in the summer. They want to get through and they want to do good work. And that's what I'm expecting of you, that you'll give at least 6 hours of your time each week to this course with the understanding you might need to give more some weeks, that you'll reach out to me when you have questions, and that you will get feedback from me on the work you submit and all of that. And I guess I should speak to the feedback piece. When you submit assignments, I will score them using a rubric that's for the assignment most times, and I will try to offer you feedback where appropriate to help you, address any writing opportunities that you have, any growth opportunities that you have. So just always try your best and know that I'll give you some feedback if needed to help, help direct you to where you need to go. Um, the requirement for us as faculty is to return work within 1 week of the submitted assignment. So you have an assignment that's due on a Monday. Well, by the following Monday, by the end of the day, you should get feedback and a grade on that assignment. Okay. That's what you should expect there. All right. Now I don't think I've forgotten anything I wanted to cover. Thank you all. I will reach out to you again for Module 1 next week. And otherwise, take good care. And I'm going to try to go ahead and stop the recording. All right. Thanks, everyone.